Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Dark Fears family. Tonight, we're not staying home. We're getting behind the wheel. Because some roads should never be traveled. It's late October. The air bites cold, leaves whisper across the asphalt, and the radio fades into static as your headlights slice through a fog that wasn't there a minute ago. You're miles from town, and something just crossed the road. They say October road trips have magic, but behind that beauty hide shadows that follow. Tonight, we explore 7 true, terrifying October road trip encounters. Real stories from travelers who thought they were just passing through. Some made it home, others didn't. One woman swore she saw a man waving beside a wreck, but when she stopped, there was no crash, only wet footprints leading into the woods. So buckle up, keep your eyes on the road, and remember, sometimes it's better not to stop. My name is Daniel, and this happened on October 14th, 2019, a night I can never forget. I was driving from Seattle to Portland, taking the scenic route along Highway 101. It was past midnight, and a heavy fog had rolled in from the coast, the kind that makes your high beams useless and your stomach twist with unease. For miles, I hadn't seen another car, just my own reflection in the rearview mirror, my tired eyes glowing pale from the dashboard light. I remember thinking how peaceful it felt, that eerie calm you only get when you're completely alone. Then I saw him, a figure standing on the side of the road, barely visible through the mist. He was wearing an old flannel jacket, one arm raised like he was trying to wave me down. His head was tilted low, hiding his face. I slowed down out of instinct. Maybe he needed help. But something in my gut screamed, "Don't stop." The closer I got, the more wrong he looked. His clothes were soaked, hanging off his frame like he'd just crawled out of the ocean. And when my headlights hit him directly, he vanished. Just like that. Gone. My heart was pounding. I slammed the brakes, my tires skidding slightly on the wet pavement. The fog swallowed everything beyond the beam of my headlights. There was no sign of the man, not a shadow, not a footprint. Just empty road. I told myself maybe it was a trick of the fog, a hallucination from driving too long without rest. But deep down, I knew what I'd seen. That flannel jacket. It looked old, almost rotted. I took a deep breath and eased back onto the road. The silence inside the car felt deafening. Even my radio had gone static. About 2 miles ahead, something flickered in the mist again. My headlights caught movement, a shape drifting slowly across the asphalt. I leaned forward, squinting. It was him, the same man. He was standing right in the middle of the road this time, his head tilted toward my car as if he had been waiting. I slammed the horn, no reaction. Then he lifted his arm again and pointed directly at me. My blood ran cold. Before I could react, the temperature inside the car dropped so fast I could see my breath. My windshield fogged up completely, and for a few terrifying seconds, I couldn't see the road at all. I swiped at the windshield, trying to clear the condensation with my sleeve. But the glass stayed fogged, almost like it was steaming from the inside. I could still make out the faint glow of my headlights, cutting through the haze, and behind that glow, movement. A face appeared in the fog outside my driver's window. Just a glimpse. Pale, waterlogged skin and hollow eyes that seemed to shimmer faintly. I jerked the wheel instinctively, nearly driving off the shoulder. When I looked again, there was nothing. I tried to laugh it off, muttering to myself, "You're just tired, Daniel. It's just fog and shadows." But the moment I said it, my car stereo came alive with a soft hiss. Then a voice. "Why, didn't you stop?" I froze. It wasn't the radio station. It was whispering through the static, distorted but unmistakably human. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice trembling. Silence followed. Only the distant hum of my engine filled the air again. I pressed the gas harder, pushing past 70. I didn't want to see that foggy road anymore. I just wanted to reach Portland. But the road ahead was empty, until my headlights illuminated a wooden sign. "Welcome to Coldwell." I'd never heard of that town before. Coldwell wasn't on any map I'd seen. I drove slowly through what looked like an old roadside town. Flickering neon lights, closed shops, and a single diner with its sign half lit. Rosie's Place, open 24 hours. The parking lot was empty. I pulled in, relieved to see light inside. Maybe someone there could tell me where I was. As I stepped out of the car, I noticed something strange. There were no sounds, no crickets, no wind, nothing. Just a heavy silence that pressed against my ears. Inside, the diner smelled faintly of coffee and mildew. A single woman stood behind the counter, staring at me like she'd been expecting someone. "Rough night?" she asked in a low voice. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Ran into some fog. Almost hit someone." Her expression darkened. "You saw him, didn't you?" My breath caught. "What do you mean?" She leaned closer, whispering, "The man in the flannel. Don't drive past Coldwell at night. Not in October." Before I could ask more, the lights flickered, once, twice, and then the door behind me creaked open. The smell of seawater filled the room. The bell above the door chimed softly. But when I turned around, there was no one there. Just fog rolling in from the street, curling around the diner booths like smoke. The woman, Rosie, judging by her name tag, backed away slowly. "He follows the ones who almost stop," she said, her voice trembling. "Once he's seen you, he won't let you go until you've looked him in the eyes." I didn't understand. "Who is he?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached under the counter and handed me an old Polaroid photo. My hands shook as I looked at it. It was a picture of a car, same make, same color as mine, parked on a foggy road. And standing right beside it was the same man in the soaked flannel, his head tilted the same way I'd seen him. "When was this taken?" I asked. Rosie swallowed hard. "October 14th, 1989. My stomach dropped. That was exactly 30 years ago, to the day. And in the reflection of the diner window, I saw him again, standing outside, watching. I backed away from the window, clutching the photo. The fog outside thickened until it pressed against the glass like a living thing. Rosie whispered, "Don't look at him, no matter what." But then the lights went out. The only illumination came from the flashing neon sign outside, painting the diner in pulses of red and blue. Between each flicker, I saw movement. The hitchhiker's outline getting closer. The bell chimed again, slow and deliberate. I could hear wet footsteps on the tile now, leaving dark prints that trailed toward me. Rosie ducked behind the counter, whispering prayers under her breath. I turned, and for the briefest moment, I saw his face, pale and bloated, eyes white as fog, water dripping from his hair. Then, he smiled. Not a human smile. Something stretched, wrong, like his skin didn't fit right. I stumbled backward, grabbing the door handle to escape. But when I opened it, there was no street outside, only endless fog. And somewhere in that fog, a whisper came. "Now you've seen me." I bolted through the fog, disoriented and panicked, hoping to find my car. The air felt thick and wet in my lungs. When I finally reached the parking lot, My vehicle sat exactly where I left it, except the driver's door was wide open. I didn't remember leaving it that way. Inside, the interior was soaked. The seat cushions squelched under my hands, and on the dashboard, someone had written in fogged condensation, "Take me home." I jumped back, heart hammering. The radio came alive again, playing an old song through static. "Stand by me." I jammed the keys into the ignition and sped off, desperate to leave Coldwell behind. The town vanished almost immediately in the mirror, like it was never there. But something was wrong. The fog never lifted. The temperature dropped lower and lower, my breath clouding the air inside the car. Then, through the reflection of the rearview mirror, I saw him sitting in the back seat. Soaked, silent, staring. I swerved off the road, skidding into the shoulder, and jumped out of the car. The door slammed behind me on its own. My mind raced. This couldn't be real. I looked back through the windshield, but the back seat was empty. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then my car's headlights flickered and turned off completely. Everything went black. Somewhere in the darkness, I heard the crunch of gravel. Slow, heavy footsteps circling me. Then his voice, closer this time. "You left me there." I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand. The beam landed on the hitchhiker just a few feet away. His clothes hung like seaweed, eyes sunken and hollow. I stumbled backward, shouting, "What do you want?" He raised his hand again and pointed, this time toward the forest behind me. And from within the trees came the faint sound of water dripping, like a leaking pipe or a drowning breath. The dripping sound grew louder as I stepped toward the trees, drawn by something I couldn't explain. The forest was dense, the ground soft with mud. Every few feet, I thought I saw flashes of movement, a pale shape slipping between the trunks. Then I saw it, an old car, half submerged in a shallow marsh, rusted and overgrown with moss. I waited closer, my flashlight trembling. The license plate caught my eye, OCT 1989. Inside the shattered windshield, a skeleton sat slumped against the steering wheel, wearing a flannel jacket. My stomach turned. It was him. I backed away slowly, realizing the truth. The hitchhiker wasn't someone who needed help. He was stuck there. But as I turned to leave, a cold hand gripped my shoulder. I spun around, face to face, with the same dead eyes from the marsh. He whispered, "You saw me. Now they'll see you," and the world went black. When I woke up, it was morning. My car was parked on the shoulder of Highway 101. Engine cold, doors locked from the inside. No fog, no town, no diner. Everything looked normal. For a while, I convinced myself it was just a nightmare brought on by exhaustion. But when I looked down, I saw the Polaroid photo lying on the passenger seat. Only now, the image had changed. It wasn't the same picture anymore. This time, the car in the photo was mine, and the man in flannel was standing right behind it, his hand resting on the roof, staring straight at the camera. I threw the picture out the window and drove as fast as I could until I saw daylight. But sometimes, when fog rolls over the coast in October, my car's stereo still cuts to static. And through the hiss, a voice whispers, "Why didn't you stop?" My name is Rachel, and this happened during an October road trip I wish I'd never taken. I was driving cross-country from Colorado to Nevada, chasing fall colors and solitude after a messy breakup. Around midnight, somewhere between the Utah desert and the Nevada border, my GPS lost signal. The road stretched endlessly, No signs, no lights, just darkness. Then, like a miracle, I saw a flicker of neon in the distance. A motel sign. Sunset Vista Motel. Vacancy. It looked old, like something from the 1960s, with chipped paint and a buzzing sign half broken. But I was too tired to care. I pulled in, gravel crunching under my tires. There were maybe a dozen rooms, all lined up in a single row, but no other cars. Inside the small lobby, a bell rang as I stepped in. A tall, pale man appeared from the back, wearing an outdated uniform and a crooked name tag that read, Paul. "You're our only guest tonight," he said with a stiff smile. "Room 7. He handed me an old-fashioned metal key, not a card. And when our hands brushed, his skin felt ice cold. Something about his eyes unsettled me. They didn't blink. Room 7 was at the far end of the row, its faded blue door barely hanging on its hinges. Inside, the air smelled like mildew and cigarette smoke that had seeped into the walls decades ago. The bedspread was patterned with ugly brown flowers, and a single light bulb flickered above the nightstand. I told myself it was just one night. I'd leave at sunrise. As I unpacked my bag, I heard something. Faint footsteps above me. It sounded like someone pacing slowly back and forth. But the motel was only one story high. I froze. The sound stopped the moment I listened. I shook it off, telling myself maybe it was pipes or old wood shifting. But then, the phone on the nightstand rang. An old rotary model, the kind that shouldn't even work anymore. I hesitated before picking it up. "Hello?" Static hissed through the line, followed by a whisper so faint I almost thought it was in my head. "Don't. Stay in 7. Then silence. I stared at the receiver, my pulse pounding in my ears. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe Paul thought it would be funny. But when I looked out the window toward the front office, the neon motel sign had gone dark. I grabbed my jacket and decided to confront Paul. Maybe I'd just switch rooms, anywhere but 7. The lobby light was still on, but when I pushed the glass door open, the bell didn't ring this time. The place looked abandoned. A thick layer of dust covered the counter and furniture, and the key rack behind the desk was empty, except for one hook labeled Room 7. I called out, "Paul?" No answer, only the faint hum of the flickering fluorescent light. Then I noticed something strange. On the wall behind the counter hung a black and white photograph, an old picture of the same motel, taken decades ago. My breath caught when I looked closer. Standing in front of the office, smiling stiffly, was Paul. Same face, same crooked name tag. Only, the photo was dated October 1971. The edges of the photo were burned, and the words, "They never checked out," were scrawled across the bottom in faded ink. I backed away slowly, heart racing. That's when I saw movement through the window, a shadow gliding past the door of room 7. My door. I ran back toward my room, flashlight in hand. The parking lot was dead silent, my car the only one there. I swung the beam toward room 7. The door was open just an inch, moving slightly in the breeze. I whispered, "No." The air around it felt colder, heavier. I forced myself to push it open. Inside, the room looked completely different. The bed was stripped bare, the walls peeling, and a thick layer of dust coated everything. It looked like no one had stayed there in years. But I had. My suitcase was gone. The light was out. Then I noticed the bathroom door. It was closed, faint light glowing from the crack at the bottom. I stepped closer, each creak of the floor echoing louder than it should. I reached for the handle, and just as I touched it, the light inside flicked off. A whisper came from behind me, soft and breathy. You should have left when the phone rang. I spun around. No one was there. When I turned back toward the bathroom, the door was wide open. The smell hit first. Damp, rotting wood, mixed with something metallic. I shined my flashlight inside the bathroom. The mirror was shattered, and across the cracked tiles were dark stains that trailed toward the bathtub. My throat went dry. I took a step closer and aimed the light into the tub. It was full of water, murky gray water, and just beneath the surface, something moved. I stumbled back, slamming into the wall as a pale hand broke through the water. A hand, bloated and blue, followed by another. Then a face. It was Paul. His eyes were milky white, his mouth twisted in an unnatural grin. He pushed himself halfway out of the tub, water spilling across the floor. "Checking out," he rasped, voice bubbling with each word. I screamed and bolted from the room, sprinting into the night air. The motel lights flickered violently behind me. Every room door slammed shut at once, echoing through the lot. I ran to my car, fumbling with my keys. But when I looked at the building again, the motel was gone. Just open desert. I blinked in disbelief. The entire motel had vanished. No lights, no neon sign, no road. Just empty desert stretching endlessly in every direction. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my keys. The cold wind howled through the silence, lifting sand across my feet. Then I noticed the outline of something faint in the distance. A shape, almost transparent. It looked like the motel, flickering in and out like a mirage. For a split second, I saw movement in one of the rooms. A curtain shifting. A silhouette standing behind the glass. I stumbled toward it, drawn by something I couldn't explain. The closer I got, the louder the whispering became, hundreds of overlapping voices saying things I couldn't understand. "Come back. Check in. Stay." I turned and ran, the whispers growing sharper, angrier. When I finally looked back, the motel had disappeared again. Only the sign remained. It was lying on the ground, half buried in sand. Its neon tubes glowed faintly red, flickering on and off like a dying heartbeat. Sunset Vista Motel. I collapsed beside the fallen sign, struggling to breathe. My phone still had no signal, but when I opened the camera app, the screen showed something that wasn't there. Through the lens, the motel stood perfectly intact. Lights on, door of room 7 wide open, and someone was standing in it. Paul. I lowered the phone, nothing but sand. Raised it again, he was closer now, walking toward me through the digital viewfinder. My chest tightened as I dropped the phone. I didn't dare pick it up again. I just ran. After a few minutes, I reached a highway. Cars passed by like nothing was wrong. I flagged down a truck driver who reluctantly stopped. When I told him about the motel, his face went pale. "You didn't stop there," he said. "Not the Sunset Vista. That place burned down in '71. Everyone inside, gone." I turned to look behind me, and the horizon shimmered. For just a moment, I could see the motel burning, orange flames licking the night sky. Then it was gone. The truck driver offered to take me to the next town, but the entire drive, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Every few minutes, I caught glimpses of light flickering in the rearview mirror, like neon trying to come alive in the dark. When we stopped for gas, I stepped out for air. The driver handed me a bottle of water and said softly, "Whatever you saw, don't go back that way." But when I glanced at his truck door, my blood froze. Hanging from his rearview mirror was a rusted motel key tag. Number 7. I took a step back, voice shaking. "Where did you get that?" He looked confused. Been there since I bought the truck. Why? The wind picked up suddenly, carrying with it the faintest smell of smoke and salt. Behind him, in the reflection of the gas station window, I saw Paul standing just over his shoulder, smiling at me. The lights flickered. Then everything went dark. When the lights came back on, the driver was gone. The truck, too. I was standing alone under the buzzing sign, heart racing. The key tag lay at my feet. I picked it up. It felt cold and damp, like it had just been pulled from water. Scratched into the metal on the back were 3 words: "We never left." A noise drew my attention, the sound of a ringing phone. It was faint, distant, but I could hear it clearly. I followed the sound around the corner of the gas station, and there it was. A payphone bolted to the wall, its receiver swinging slightly. I lifted it slowly. Static, then a voice. "Rachel, room 7 is ready." I screamed and threw the phone down, stumbling backward. My car, my real car, sat waiting at the curb. I jumped in, slammed the door, and drove without stopping until the sun came up. When I finally pulled over at a diner miles away, I saw it, the motel key tag hanging from my own rearview mirror. It's been 3 years since that night, but I still see the Sunset Vista Motel in my dreams. Sometimes it looks new, glowing, clean, alive. Sometimes it's burning, the smoke curling into the night sky while voices echo my name. I've thrown the key away more times than I can count, but it always comes back. Once, it appeared in my mailbox. Another time, dangling from my bathroom door. And last week, while driving home late at night, my headlights caught something in the distance, faint, red, flickering. A sign. Sunset Vista Motel, vacancy. My phone started ringing, even though I had no signal. The caller ID simply said, "Room 7." I didn't answer. I just kept driving, gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. But the next morning, when I checked my phone, there was a new photo in my gallery. A picture of me, asleep in that motel room. Room 7. My name is Caleb, and this happened during an October road trip through northern Arizona in 2021. I was driving from Flagstaff to Albuquerque, planning to make it in one go, but exhaustion hit hard around 2 a.m. The desert road was empty, no lights, no towns, just darkness stretching endlessly in both directions. When I saw a sign for a rest area, 1 mile, I almost sighed with relief. I pulled in, parked near the dimly lit bathrooms, and got out. The cold desert air bit into my skin. The fluorescent light above the restroom door buzzed and flickered weakly. Inside, the place smelled of bleach and rust. One stall door hung half-broken. The mirror was cracked. I washed my face and stared at my reflection, trying to shake off the road fatigue. That's when I heard it. The sound of bare feet slapping against the wet floor. Slow, deliberate, coming from the far stall. I froze. "Hello?" I called out. No answer, just breathing. Deep, heavy, ragged breathing. I took a step closer, heart pounding, and looked under the stalls. There were feet, pale, dirty, and facing the wrong direction. The moment I saw those backward-facing feet, a cold wave of panic shot through me. I stumbled back, my shoulders slamming into the sink. The breathing stopped. Then came a sound, like bones cracking, slow and wet. The stall door creaked open an inch. I couldn't see much, just darkness and movement. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs felt frozen. I took one shaky step backward, then another. That's when I heard a whisper. Not from a mouth, from everywhere. "Don't leave me here." The voice was low, raspy, echoing through the tiles. I bolted for the door, my shoes squeaking against the wet floor. But when I shoved the metal handle, it didn't budge. Locked. Behind me, something scraped across the tiles. Don't leave. It was closer now. And I swear I heard the sound of something crawling, dragging its limbs. I turned, trembling, and saw a pale hand slip out from under the stall. The fingers bent backward like broken branches. I kicked the door handle again. Nothing. The lock was jammed. My breath came in short gasps. Behind me, the stall door slowly creaked open wider, inch by inch. The sound of something dragging echoed closer. I grabbed a trash bin and slammed it against the door. It burst open with a metallic snap, and I ran outside into the cold desert night. The air felt different, heavy, wrong. My car was the only one in the lot. I sprinted toward it, fumbling with my keys. Then I froze. In the car's reflection, I saw the restroom door behind me. It was wide open, and there was someone, or something, standing just inside the doorway. It looked like a person, but too tall. Limbs too long, neck too thin. Its head tilted sideways, almost touching its shoulder. I jumped into my car, locked the doors, and slammed it into reverse. As my headlights swung across the building, the figure was gone. But the bathroom door was still slowly swinging back and forth, like something had just stepped out. I hit the gas, speeding out of the rest stop as fast as I could. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep the wheel straight. After about 5 minutes, I tried to calm myself down. I told myself maybe it was just exhaustion. I'd been awake for almost 18 hours. Maybe I hallucinated. But then I smelled it. That same chemical rot stench from the bathroom. Inside my car. I turned down the music. The faint sound of dripping water filled the silence. I looked at the rearview mirror. Nothing. Then, a wet handprint appeared on the inside of my back window. Slowly, like someone pressing from the trunk. I nearly swerved off the road. My heart hammered in my chest as I pulled over, jumped out, and popped the trunk. Empty. No one there. But the carpet inside was soaked. I didn't know what to do. I stood by the car in the freezing air, trying to think. My phone had no signal, just endless static. I decided to keep driving until I reached the next town. As I got back in the car, I noticed something strange. Muddy footprints on the floor mat of the back seat. I hadn't noticed them before. They weren't mine. They were small, like a child's. I swallowed hard, started the engine, and got back on the highway. My eyes darted between the road and the rearview mirror. The fog was thicker now. Somewhere between the static of the radio, I began to hear faint whispers. They sounded like crying. At first, I thought it was the radio, but when I turned it off, the whispering continued. Soft, muffled, coming from behind me. Help me. I glanced back. For a split second, I saw a shape in the seat behind me. A pale face, eyes black, mouth gaping open as if screaming silently. Then it was gone. I started yelling, more to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. I rolled down the window, cold desert air slapping my face. Get out! Whatever you are, get out! My voice echoed into the emptiness. That's when I saw headlights up ahead, a gas station glowing like salvation. I pulled in fast, parked near the pump, and jumped out. The attendant, an older man with gray stubble, looked at me like I was crazy. "You okay, son?" he asked. I tried to explain. The thing in the bathroom, the smell, the handprints. But I could tell he didn't believe me. Still, when I mentioned the rest stop, his expression changed. "You stopped at that one?" he said quietly. "Off Highway 191? I nodded. He took a slow drag from his cigarette. That place was shut down 10 years ago. Some drifter went missing there. They never found him. Or his daughter. My stomach dropped. I looked back toward the highway, but all I could see was blackness. I saw something in there, I stammered. A person. Or what used to be the old man flicked his cigarette, eyes fixed on me. Son, whatever you saw wasn't living. He told me stories about truckers hearing crying in the stalls, about travelers finding wet footprints leading from the bathroom to their cars. Some said it was the drifter. Others said it was his little girl, drowned in a flood that hit the rest stop years ago. I didn't wait for more. I thanked him, filled up, and drove off. But even with the window open and the radio blasting, I could still smell it, that damp rot. When I checked the rearview mirror again, I froze. In the back seat, there was a child's hand pressed against the window. I couldn't breathe. The handprint faded slowly, leaving streaks of condensation. I pulled onto the shoulder, got out, and shone my phone flashlight inside. Nothing. Just my own reflection staring back at me. I drove for hours until the first hint of dawn touched the horizon. The fog lifted, and everything started to feel normal again. I found a diner just outside Gallup and stopped for breakfast. My hands were still trembling as I reached for my coffee. When I looked out the window, I saw my car parked across the lot and froze. There were 2 sets of wet footprints leading from the driver's door to the restroom. One set large, the other small. I left the diner without finishing my food. The waitress looked at me funny when I paid. I didn't care. I just wanted to get as far away as possible. By late afternoon, I reached Albuquerque, checked into a motel, took a long, hot shower trying to wash off the dread that had clung to me all night. When I stepped out, the bathroom mirror was fogged over. I wiped it with my hand and froze. In the condensation, words had appeared, written from the inside. You left me there. The air turned icy. I stumbled back, heart racing. The lights flickered, and for a second, I saw her reflection behind me. A little girl soaked, her eyes black voids, her mouth whispering something I couldn't hear. Then the lights went out. When the lights came back on, she was gone. The mirror was clean. I didn't sleep that night. I packed up at dawn and left before anyone else woke up. I've driven past hundreds of rest stops since then, never stopped at one again. Sometimes, though, when it rains or fog settles over the road, I catch a faint smell of bleach and rust inside my car. And when I glance in the mirror, just sometimes, I see a small face reflected in the back seat, staring at me with those hollow eyes. If you ever find yourself on Highway 191 in northern Arizona and see a rest stop with flickering lights and an old closed sign hanging crooked, keep driving, because she's still there, waiting. My name is Marcus, and this happened on an October night while driving back to Phoenix from a weekend camping trip in New Mexico. The highway was empty, lined with skeletal trees swaying in the wind. Fog clung low to the road, and my headlights barely cut through the thick air. I had been driving for hours and was running low on gas. That's when I saw him. A man standing on the shoulder, thumb out, hoodie pulled tight over his head. His posture was odd, too stiff, almost like a mannequin. I debated stopping. Something about him made my skin crawl. But my conscience and the thought of helping someone on the deserted highway won. I slowed and pulled over. Need a ride? I asked cautiously. He didn't answer at first. Then, In a voice that was low and monotone, he said, "Thank you." He slid into the passenger seat without another word. I tried to make small talk, but he didn't respond. Just stared straight ahead, his eyes pale, almost reflective in the dim light. Didn't move. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Minutes passed in eerie silence until I noticed something impossible. He was too tall for the seat. His legs seemed to stretch unnaturally, scraping against the dashboard, yet there was no sign of discomfort. Something about him wasn't right. I tried to stay calm and focus on the road. Every time I glanced at him, his eyes reflected the dim dashboard light, unnaturally bright. "Where are you headed?" I asked cautiously. He didn't answer. Minutes stretched. I could hear the faint sound of his breathing, slow and raspy, like air escaping through a wet cloth. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just a tired man. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. His arm twitched unnaturally, stretching past the seatbelt in a way that shouldn't be physically possible. My pulse shot through the roof. I took a deep breath and tried to focus on the road. Suddenly, his hand rested on my arm. Cold, rigid, unnerving. "Keep driving," he whispered. The tone wasn't human. It carried an edge that made my stomach churn. I nodded slowly, gripping the wheel tighter, the fog growing thicker outside the headlights. Then, out of nowhere, a shape darted across the road, a deer maybe. I slammed the brakes and he laughed. Not a normal laugh, a hollow, unnatural sound that echoed inside the car like metal scraping metal. I realized then I had made a huge mistake. After regaining control, I sped up. He didn't protest. His body seemed to mold into the seat like a shadow. Then I noticed the rearview mirror. It wasn't reflecting him. I leaned closer. His face had no reflection at all. A chill crawled up my spine. My hands were shaking, my breath short. Who are you?" I stammered. He leaned closer, almost impossibly fast. "My name doesn't matter," he said, "but you shouldn't have stopped." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy, like smoke. I glanced at the speedometer. 80 miles per hour, my car shaking on the foggy asphalt. The road seemed endless, twisting unnaturally, the yellow lines stretching into eternity. I blinked, and a pair of headlights appeared in the distance. Another car. But the fog swallowed it almost immediately. I realized then. The highway had changed. I didn't recognize any landmarks. The desert trees looked distorted, like reflections in water. I was trapped, and the thing in my car knew it. And the thing... I tried to call 911. No signal. My heart pounded in my chest. He watched me silently, smiling faintly, the kind of smile that didn't belong on a human face. Suddenly, he reached over and pressed a finger against my GPS screen. It flashed. The route vanished. My planned path to Phoenix was gone, replaced with a looping road I didn't recognize. The GPS whispered a faint, static voice. "Keep going." I realized then he was controlling everything. The road, the fog, the lights. I tried to swerve into a side road, but it was gone. Just endless black asphalt and fog. I felt trapped, like I was driving in some twisted dream. Minutes, hours, passed. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional scraping of his elongated fingers against the seat. Then he spoke again. "Soon, you'll understand why they never make it home." I swallowed hard, my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. Something cold brushed against my neck. I jerked back. Nothing. But I could feel it watching me. Waiting, hours blurred together. My mind was numb, I felt I was in some sort of liminal space, neither night nor day. Every reflective surface, mirrors, windows, dashboard, showed him behind me, sometimes closer, sometimes further, but always there. Then I noticed something even worse. Faint, shadowy shapes outside the car, moving with me. Trees? Figures? I couldn't tell. My eyes caught movement in the side mirror. Another passenger. Small girl, pale with black eyes, sitting silently in the back seat. I nearly lost it. I slammed my hand on the dashboard and both vanished. Just empty seats, the fog thick and suffocating. I whispered to myself, I have to survive this. I forced my foot down, hoping speed would break the spell. But the road stretched endlessly, the headlights cutting nothing but dense gray mist. Then, faintly, I heard laughter. It wasn't him. It was them. Dozens of voices. Childlike, eerie, whispering, echoing from the fog outside. The fog grew denser, pressing in on the car like hands, suffocating. Exhaustion overtook me. I realized I hadn't blinked, hadn't even breathed properly. Then, something tapped my shoulder. I nearly screamed. He was behind me. Standing, but the seatbelt, the backrest, impossible. His mouth opened wide, too wide, and whispered in a voice that sounded like a dozen people at once. Why did you let them in? I had no answer. My vision tunneled, my pulse hammered. I felt my consciousness slipping. When I blinked, the fog started to thin. Trees regained their normal shapes. The road markings returned. I was on a recognizable stretch of highway, one I knew. I was going home. He sat silently, pale, unblinking. Finally, I reached the city limits of Phoenix. The fog lifted entirely. He was gone. No door opening, no exit. Just gone. I drove straight to my apartment, shaking, sweating, terror coursing through every vein. I thought it was over. Days later, strange things began happening. My GPS would flicker and show roads that didn't exist, always looping back to a dark desert highway. At night, I heard scratching in the walls of my apartment, faint breathing from empty rooms. One morning, I found a scrap of cloth in my car, black hoodie material, identical to what the hitchhiker wore. I burned it. It returned. And last week, my girlfriend called me, terrified. She said she saw a pale man standing silently in my driveway, watching the house. I never saw him enter. But when I opened the door, he was gone. I started researching, desperate for answers. Local news? Nothing. Urban legends? Some stories of phantom hitchhikers along Highway 287. Some never make it home. Others appear years later, but pale, empty-eyed. I realized I'd brushed against something ancient, something that feeds on fear, isolation, and desperation. The thought chilled me. Every lonely road, every foggy night could bring him back. Sometimes, while driving, I see a figure in my side mirror, distant, almost transparent, waiting to catch up. And I know, if I ever stop or slow down, he will enter. I don't stop for hitchhikers anymore. I've tried to tell people, friends, family, the police. They all look at me like I'm insane. But I know what I saw. I know the chilling, unnatural stretch of his limbs, the unblinking, reflective eyes, the hollow laughter. And the worst part? I still see him sometimes. Even now, on roads I drive daily. Waiting for fog, waiting for darkness. He doesn't need an invitation anymore. If you ever find yourself driving alone on a foggy desert highway in October, be careful who you pick up. Because some hitchhikers aren't lost, desperate, or human. Some follow you home, and sometimes they wait in the shadows until the road goes quiet and you're alone. I still drive carefully, always watching, always aware. Sometimes, when the fog rolls in, I catch a glimpse of him in the rearview mirror. Pale, tall, silent, watching, waiting. If he's behind me, I don't stop, and neither should you. My name is Ethan, and this happened on an October night while I was driving alone from Albuquerque to Las Cruces. The highway was desolate, and a thick fog had settled over the desert, swallowing everything in a muted gray haze. My headlights barely reached more than 50 feet ahead, and the cold night air pressed against the glass like an invisible hand. I was exhausted, craving coffee and the warmth of a gas station. Hours earlier, I'd seen a small, blinking light in the distance, a gas station sign, old and flickering, like it had survived decades of neglect. Relief surged through me, and I slowed the car, trying to spot an entrance through the fog. The gas station looked abandoned at first glance. The pumps were old and rusted. The windows were grimy, reflecting the faint neon sign in broken, distorted streaks. A single light above the entrance buzzed and flickered intermittently. I stepped out of my car, the gravel crunching under my boots, and felt the desert chill bite at my skin. I waved a hand in front of my face. Something wasn't right. The air was heavy, almost viscous, and I had the unsettling sense that I was being watched. Inside, the store was empty. Not a single clerk, no shelves stocked with snacks. Just a dim fluorescent glow and a thick layer of dust over the counter. I called out, "Hello?" Nothing. That's when I noticed it. A shadow, long and distorted, stretching across the floor from the corner of the store. It wasn't attached to anything. No person, no object. It just moved. Slow, deliberate, like it was creeping toward me. I froze, my pulse hammering in my ears. My rational mind tried to explain it. Maybe a trick of the light, a reflection. But the shadow didn't behave like light. It warped around the shelves, ducked under counters, and paused just out of reach, as if it knew I could see it. Then the lights flickered out completely. The fluorescent hum died, plunging me into darkness. I could hear faint, dragging footsteps moving toward me, echoing unnaturally across the empty store. And I realized I wasn't alone. I stumbled backward toward the door, fumbling in the dark. My phone had no signal, and the weak flashlight barely cut through the black. The dragging sound grew closer, slow, deliberate, like something large with joints bending wrong. I could feel a cold presence circling me, almost tangible, brushing against my skin like icy fingers. My breath came in ragged bursts. I tried to scream, but only a whisper escaped. Then, a whisper answered me. "You shouldn't be here." It wasn't human. The voice was layered, like multiple voices speaking at once, low, echoing, impossible. I spun, trying to locate the source. Nothing but shadows stretching unnaturally along the floor. The longer I stared, the more they seemed to move against the grain, defying logic. Suddenly, the single light above the door flickered back on. In that brief flash, I saw it. A figure, tall, thin, faceless, gliding across the floor, its shadow merging with the long, creeping darkness. The light went out again. I bolted for the door, slammed it open, and ran toward my car. Gravel sprayed under my boots as I sprinted, heart hammering. When I reached the car, I glanced back. The gas station windows were completely dark, silent. But in the faint reflection on my rearview mirror, I saw the shadow standing behind me, just inside the door. Motionless, waiting. I slammed the door, locked it, and turned the key. The engine roared to life, shaking me with every vibration. My hands were trembling. I kept my eyes on the mirrors, expecting it to appear at any moment. For several miles, the road remained empty. fog thick and oppressive. My heart rate slowed slightly, and I tried to convince myself that maybe I had imagined it. Exhaustion, stress, maybe a trick of the light. But then I heard it. From the back seat, a slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap on the rear window. I didn't dare turn my head. The sound continued, steady, rhythmical, impossible. I floored the gas, weaving through the fog. The tapping stopped. I exhaled shakily, trying to calm my racing thoughts. But then came a thump from the trunk. I slammed the brakes, jumped out, and ran to the back of the car. Nothing. The trunk was locked. No footprints in the gravel. When I turned around, I caught a glimpse of the gas station in the distance, a faint flicker of the neon sign. And then I saw it standing on the highway, tall, faceless, shadows stretching behind it, gliding toward me at impossible speed. I jumped into the car and didn't look back. I tried to focus on the road, breathing rapidly. The fog seemed to follow me, rolling and curling around the car like liquid. Minutes passed, maybe hours. I had no sense of distance. Every reflective surface in the car, mirrors, windows, dashboard, seemed to flicker with shadows that weren't mine. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw a pair of glowing eyes floating in the darkness behind me. Not moving like a car, but hovering. Panic overtook me. I tried to call 911 again. No signal. The radio sputtered, then burst into static, whispering voices echoing faintly. Don't stop. Don't look. I forced myself to keep driving. Then the highway split, a turn I didn't recognize. The fog thickened, forming shapes of tall, featureless figures, standing along the side, watching silently. My car lights cut through them briefly, but they never moved, never blinked. The shadows were waiting. The road began to feel endless. I didn't know where I was. Every mile marker seemed wrong. I glanced at the gas gauge, full. That made no sense. Hours ago, it had been near empty. The tapping began again, faint at first, then louder, on the roof of the car. My hands tightened on the wheel. A shadow passed under my headlights, just a blur, too fast, moving alongside the car. My pulse raced. I couldn't escape. The shadow seemed to mimic my every movement, keeping pace without leaving a trace. Then came a whisper from the passenger seat. "You can't leave?" I slammed on the brakes, skidding across the asphalt. When I looked, the seat was empty. Nothing. Just the sound of the fog shifting around me. I forced the engine forward, trying to leave. But the fog closed in, swallowing the headlights until the road ahead disappeared completely. I saw lights ahead, a small town maybe 10 miles away. Relief washed over me. But when I got closer, the town was empty. No cars, no people, all windows dark. Even the streetlights flickered and bent unnaturally. I parked at what seemed like a gas station, another one, hoping for safety. The pumps were intact, but the doors were chained and locked. A shadow moved inside, pacing slowly. I shouted, pounding on the glass. Nothing. Then the shadow stopped. It tilted its head, faceless, glowing faintly in the dim light. Then it vanished. I ran back to my car. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw dozens of shadows emerging from the fog, slowly following the road behind me, faceless, silent, and infinite. I floored the gas, leaving the town behind. But the shadows stayed, always on the horizon, blending into the fog. I couldn't shake them. Every turn, every mile they appeared, always faceless, silent, endless. When I stopped for fuel the next day, I checked the rearview mirror. Nothing. Relief. But that night, in my apartment, I saw it. On the wall, a long, distorted shadow, stretching and twisting as if alive. It didn't move. Yet I knew it was waiting. Since that night, I don't drive alone after dark. I avoid highways, fog, and any deserted road. Sometimes, though, I see shadows in my peripheral vision, shapes stretching unnaturally, faceless. And I know they are waiting. For me. Friends don't believe me. Family laughs it off. But I know what I saw. The shadows aren't bound by roads, buildings, or distance. They follow, and they are patient. Sometimes, on October nights, I smell faint gasoline and hear dragging footsteps outside my window. I don't look anymore. If you ever stop at a gas station alone on a foggy desert highway in October, look closely at the shadows. Not every shadow belongs to something human. Some wait, some follow, some don't blink, and some never leave. I'm Ethan, and I will never forget the shadow at the gas station. My name is Lydia, and this happened during an October road trip from Denver to Salt Lake City. I was driving alone on a narrow, twisting mountain highway when the sun dipped below the peaks, leaving long shadows and a chilling cold in its wake. The road was quiet, almost unnaturally so. No cars passed, no animals scurried across the asphalt. Just the wind whispering through the pine trees and the rhythmic hum of my tires on the pavement. That's when I noticed it. A road sign ahead, flickering in the fading light. The sign read, Pine Creek, 5 miles, old and rusted, leaning slightly to the left. I glanced at the GPS, nothing. No Pine Creek nearby. Shrugging, I thought maybe it was an abandoned town or a private property sign. As I drove closer, the sign seemed to warp, the letters twisting like they were melting in the cold mountain air. I slowed the car to read it clearly, but when I reached the exact spot, the sign was gone, completely vanished. No post, no rusted metal, nothing but empty air and the road stretching onward. I blinked. Then it reappeared. Further down the road, exactly the same text, flickering as if it were mocking me. My heart started pounding. I tried to ignore it, but each mile revealed the same phenomenon. Every sign I passed, every mile marker, disappeared and reappeared, always slightly further ahead than before. The forest around me seemed distorted, the trees unnaturally tall, leaning in as if watching. My GPS had lost all signal, and the faint light of my headlights barely penetrated the fog creeping along the mountainside. I gripped the wheel tighter. My pulse raced as I realized. The road signs weren't just broken or abandoned. They were moving, rearranging themselves to keep me on the highway. And I had no idea where it would lead. I kept driving, my eyes glued to the road, trying to ignore the gnawing fear growing in my chest. Every time I glanced at the trees, they seemed to shift subtly, as though leaning closer with each passing second. Then, a new sign appeared. Rest area. 2 miles. Relief flooded me. A place to stop, a place to breathe. I slowed, anticipating a parking lot or a small clearing. But when I arrived, the rest area wasn't there. The road stretched endlessly, the shoulder crumbling into a steep drop toward dark, shadowed forest. I slammed on the brakes, gripping the wheel tightly. My mind raced. Was I hallucinating? Tired? Number? My hands were steady, my vision clear. Something unnatural was controlling the stretch of highway. I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a brief second, I thought I saw a figure standing at the edge of the road, tall and indistinct, watching me. When I blinked, it was gone. I swallowed hard, heart pounding, and pressed on. The next sign appeared. Pine Creek, 1 mile. I had passed Pine Creek 20 minutes ago. My pulse jumped. The signs weren't just moving, they were toying with me, bending reality to lead me somewhere, or to keep me trapped. Panic began to rise. My eyes darted to the GPS, still dead. My phone, no signal. The darkness and fog seemed thicker, more oppressive, pressing against the windshield. Then I noticed movement in the trees, faint silhouettes, fleeting, impossible to identify. I blinked. Gone. I tried to focus on the road, but every sign ahead twisted as I approached, letters bending like they were melting. The road seemed to stretch, never ending. Finally, a new sign appeared. Welcome to Pine Creek, next exit 0.5 miles. Relief and dread collided. I was here, or at least the sign said I was. I slowed and pulled over to the shoulder. The fog curled around my car like hands. My headlights barely reached the trees. Then, from the corner of my vision, I saw a dark figure step onto the road. Tall, thin, and impossibly still. Faceless. I froze. It didn't move as I watched, yet it seemed to grow closer with every heartbeat. I slammed the gas pedal, tires squealing, as the figure vanished into the fog. But the signs kept appearing, each one closer than the last, guiding me deeper into the mountains. I drove faster, hands shaking, gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. Every twist in the road seemed engineered to disorient me, every mile marker vanishing before I could reach it. Then the strangest thing happened. The road looped back on itself. A familiar bend, a familiar tree, yet I knew I had never passed this point before. Ahead, a sign appeared again. Pine Creek, 0.2 miles. I had already passed it, 3 times. The fog grew heavier, almost solid, wrapping around my car. I realized I could no longer see the trees clearly. Shadows moved in the mist, indistinct, twisted, watching. Then, a whisper floated through the fog. You shouldn't be here. I slammed on the brakes, but the road beneath me curved impossibly, bending like it was alive. My stomach lurched as the car twisted with the road. When I finally slowed, I glimpsed a figure standing directly in the middle of the asphalt. Tall, featureless, and black as the void around it. It didn't move as I approached. It didn't blink. It simply waited. I swerved, trying to avoid the figure. But the road seemed to stretch endlessly, bending in ways that made no sense. Panic clawed at me. My breath came in shallow gasps, fog pressing against the windshield like it wanted to enter the car. The next sign appeared. Exit closed, Pine Creek. Letters glowing faintly, warped, as though melting in the cold night air. I slammed my hands on the steering wheel. The exit had never been closed before. It hadn't existed until now. In my peripheral vision, I noticed movement along the roadside. Shadows stretching unnaturally, mimicking my every turn, reflecting my every panic-fueled glance. The faceless figure from before wasn't alone. I pressed the accelerator, tires squealing against the wet asphalt. Behind me, the shadows elongated, racing forward with impossible speed. They moved like liquid, silent and patient. A new sign appeared directly in front of the car. Do not turn back. I had no choice. My only option was forward. I gritted my teeth and drove straight through the fog, ignoring the shadows that whispered and pressed close to the edges of the headlights. The road narrowed suddenly, cliffs rising on one side, deep forest on the other. Every turn made my stomach drop. The signs continued to appear, each one closer than the last, twisting reality around me. Then, headlights caught a movement, a figure standing directly on the edge of the cliff, motionless, faceless, staring at me. I blinked. Gone. I reached for my phone again. No signal. Radio? Dead static. Panic surged. I realized the road was no longer normal. Every mile marker, every curve, every shadow seemed designed to trap me here. A sign flickered in front of me. Pine Creek, welcome. Relief? Number? Fear? I had seen this sign countless times before. I had passed it already. Something shifted in the fog behind me. Shadows lengthened across the road, stretching impossibly toward my car. My pulse raced. I felt trapped, like the road itself had become a living entity, guiding me into some nightmare destination. I forced the car forward, every fiber of my being screaming to escape. But the shadows seemed to stick to the car, keeping pace effortlessly. A new sign appeared directly above the road. Turn back, no escape. My stomach twisted. The letters seemed alive, pulsating faintly in the fog. Ahead, the road split. Both paths were flanked by dark trees. I hesitated. Which way? The shadows moved along both paths, waiting. I had no choice. I turned right, praying for sanity. The fog thickened, swallowing everything. The road twisted, the car sliding slightly on slick asphalt. My headlights caught movement, hundreds of tiny, shadowy forms, standing silently among the trees, watching, faceless, patient. And then the sign changed again. You should not be here. A cold dread settled in my chest. I realized. The signs were alive, controlling the road, controlling me. I drove faster, tires squealing, heart pounding. The fog now moved like a river, curling around the car. The shadows weren't just on the sides, they seemed to press against the vehicle. Shapes flickering on the glass, elongating unnaturally. Then, headlights caught a glimpse of something horrifying. A massive shadow spanning the entire road, faceless, pulsating with dark energy. My car shook as if resisting. The road twisted violently, almost vertical at one point. I clutched the wheel with all my strength. The signs continued, glowing, warping, telling me what I already knew. There was no escape. A whisper echoed through the car. You will never leave. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching, but the shadows flowed under the car like water. I was trapped. The car lurched forward as if pulled. Signs spun around me, letters melting and reforming. The faceless figures emerged from the fog completely, standing along the edges, motionless yet alive. I realized the truth. The highway, the signs, the shadows. Everything was part of a trap, a supernatural loop designed to feed on fear. Ahead, the road seemed to vanish into black void. I had no control. The signs flickered one last time. Welcome to Pine Creek, forever. The car's engine died. Silence fell. Shadows pressed close. The void of the road opened before me. I closed my eyes. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on the side of a completely normal road. Daylight, clear sky. My car was gone. No signs, no shadows, nothing. I drove to the nearest town, frantic, and asked about Pine Creek. No such town existed, not on any map, not in records. But sometimes, on foggy October nights, I see the signs again, flickering on deserted roads, guiding lost travelers into the mountains. I never drive alone in October anymore. And I still dream of that faceless figure waiting silently on the asphalt, whispering, "You should not be here." I'm Lydia, and that was my encounter with the vanishing road signs. My name is Marcus, and this happened late one October night during a solo road trip from Flagstaff to Page, Arizona. The long drive along Route 89 had been beautiful in the daytime. Red rock cliffs, twisting canyons, and endless pine forests. But as the sun set, the desert landscape became ominously silent, and shadows stretched unnaturally across the asphalt. I had been driving for hours, my body aching and eyes heavy. The GPS battery was low, and cell service had disappeared miles ago. I realized I needed a place to sleep before fatigue cost me control of the car. That's when I saw it. A small, flickering neon sign glowing in the distance. It read, "Sagebrush Motel, Vacancy." The letters peeling and the bulb buzzing intermittently. Relief flooded me. Finally, a place to rest. As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed the motel looked abandoned. The paint on the building was cracked, doors warped with age. The parking lot was empty, save for my car, and the faint rustle of wind through the dry brush. Yet somehow, the sign above the entrance blinked insistently. Vacancy. I stepped out and approached the front desk. The lobby was dimly lit, smelling faintly of mildew and something metallic. No clerk, no staff, only rows of empty chairs and peeling wallpaper. A bell sat on the counter. I rang it once, twice. Silence. I started up the stairs to my room, room 7. The hallway was narrow and dark, the lights flickering intermittently, casting long, distorted shadows along the walls. The air was thick, oppressive, smelling faintly of smoke and old dust. When I reached the door, the handle rattled in my hand. I entered. The room was small, just a bed and a nightstand. But I noticed something strange. A pair of shoes neatly placed by the window, facing inward, though no one else had checked in. I laughed nervously, telling myself I was tired. But as I unpacked, the door creaked behind me, though I had locked it. The room temperature dropped suddenly, and a whisper, almost inaudible, brushed against my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. My heart pounded. I turned. The shoes had shifted. Now they were by the bed, facing me. I wasn't alone. The TV flickered on by itself, static filling the room, forming shadowy figures that seemed to move behind the static. My phone vibrated, displaying a single message: "Check out or stay forever." I realized then, this was no ordinary motel. It was a trap, feeding on weary travelers, feeding on fear itself. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart hammering, staring at the shoes that hadn't belonged to anyone. Every instinct screamed to leave, but the door refused to budge. I pulled, twisted, shook it, nothing. Then the TV crackled louder. Shadows shifted within the static, forming vague human shapes. They didn't move like normal figures. They drifted, sliding sideways, unnaturally. A low whisper echoed through the room. "Check the mirror." I turned slowly. The mirror on the wall reflected me, and someone behind me. I whipped around. Empty room. The whisper returned, louder. "You can't leave." I stumbled to the window, trying to see outside. The parking lot was empty. No other cars, no lights from the street, just darkness stretching into the desert. Then I noticed the reflection in the window. Not me. Shadows standing on the far side of the room, moving closer, faceless, distorted. I backed away, my hands trembling, and suddenly the shoes slammed themselves onto the bed. The TV erupted into static, and the whispering became a chorus of voices. "Stay. Forever." I realized then, this motel wasn't just haunted. It manipulated reality, bending the room, the objects, and even my own perception, feeding on terror and exhaustion. I stumbled toward the door, desperate to escape. The hallway outside looked normal, yet strangely longer, stretching farther than it should. The lights flickered like a heartbeat. I heard footsteps behind me, soft, deliberate, following. I turned a corner. The hallway seemed to twist impossibly. Doors that hadn't been there before now lined the corridor, each one closed, each emitting faint whispers. Room numbers flickered on the doors, 6, 5, 4, all glowing faintly, leading me toward the center of the motel. My mind screamed, "This isn't real." I tried the stairwell, but it led nowhere. Just a wall covered in peeling wallpaper, shadows moving beneath the surface. My panic grew as the whispers became a chant, "Forever, forever." Then I glimpsed it, a figure at the end of the hallway, tall, faceless, limbs elongated unnaturally. It raised a hand, pointing directly at me. My stomach dropped. I ran. The walls pulsed as if alive, constricting, trying to push me toward the room I had entered. The motel itself seemed to be a predator, and I was its prey. I backed into room 7, slamming the door, trembling. The shoes lay neatly at the foot of the bed again. The TV hummed, flickering more violently. I tried to call someone, family, friends, anyone, but no signal, no response. My phone displayed only static. The whispering grew louder, now clearly multiple voices, overlapping. "You cannot leave. You belong." I shined my flashlight across the room. Shadows clung to the walls, distorting into impossible shapes, reaching toward me. Every instinct screamed to fight, to escape, but there was no way out. Then I noticed the reflection in the window again. This time, the motel outside looked warped and twisted. Impossible angles. Doors floating in midair, shadows standing silently on the roof and in the parking lot. And the shoes. They slowly slid across the floor toward me, moving of their own accord, as if guided by some unseen force. I backed away until my back hit the wall. My eyes darted frantically, but every exit seemed gone. I realized then, this motel was alive. It warped perception, manipulated objects, and controlled anyone who entered. I was trapped. I sank to the floor, pressed against the wall, trying to calm my racing heart. The shoes stopped moving, but the whispers persisted. Louder now, overlapping voices, unintelligible yet unmistakably menacing. Then I noticed the TV. The static had cleared, showing a live feed of the room I was in. But it was wrong. Shadows moved in ways impossible in real life. My own reflection in the screen didn't match my movements exactly. My hands lagged behind, my eyes darting slower than reality. A chill crawled up my spine. The motel wasn't just alive. It was warping time and space, feeding on my fear, distorting reality around me. I backed toward the door, planning to flee, when the lights flickered violently, casting long, jagged shadows across the floor. The faceless figure from the hallway appeared in the corner, impossibly still yet radiating a presence that made the room feel suffocating. The shoes shifted again, inching closer to me, as if drawn by some malevolent will. I realized then, I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. Every sound, every shadow, every object in this motel, it had been waiting for me. Desperation took over. I grabbed the doorknob and yanked, but it wouldn't budge. The hallway outside now seemed endlessly long, twisting impossibly. The whispers became a chorus, chanting, "Forever. Stay. Belong." My skin crawled. I realized the motel's walls were breathing, pulsing slightly, alive with intent. Then the faceless figure stepped closer, moving silently. Its elongated limbs stretched toward me. I stumbled backward, crashing into the bed. The shoes leapt onto the bed beside me, perfectly aligned. They weren't shoes anymore. They were vessels, conduits for the motel's power, guiding me into terror, into control. The TV flickered violently again, and the whispers coalesced into a single chilling voice. "You cannot leave. You belong to the motel now." Panic surged. I slammed my fists on the wall. The room distorted, stretching taller, narrower, twisting in ways that defied logic. And then I understood. The motel didn't just trap travelers physically. It trapped them psychologically, bending perception, folding reality, feeding on terror until the soul was consumed. I knew I had to escape, or vanish entirely. I darted toward the window, hoping to break it, escape to the parking lot, any route out. The glass didn't shatter. It rippled like liquid. Outside, the parking lot twisted impossibly. Cars stretched, shadows lurking between them, warped into unnatural shapes. I screamed, pounding fists against the window. The faceless figure now hovered slightly above the ground, its form shifting, limbs stretching impossibly, moving faster than humanly possible. The shoes levitated, floating toward me now, their movement deliberate, malevolent. The whispers intensified. Stay. Forever. I backed away into a corner, the walls closing in. The TV screen displayed a horrific vision. My own face screaming, trapped behind a layer of static, eyes wide with terror, as faceless figures reached from the screen toward me. I realized then I was already part of the motel, psychologically bound to its walls. Every attempt to escape fed its power. Every breath I took fed its hunger. My last thought before diving under the bed was chilling. If I leave, it will follow. If I stay, it will consume me. I held my breath under the bed, the whispers now a low hum vibrating through the floor. Every object in the room seemed alive, flickering, stretching, twisting. The TV screen pulsed violently. Shadows moved in ways impossible, crawling across the walls, merging with the ceiling, falling from corners that shouldn't exist. I peeked. The faceless figure was gone from the corner, but shadows coalesced in the doorway, forming countless faceless shapes, reaching out for me. I realized the motel had no fixed form. It could manifest corridors, rooms, doors, windows, anywhere, as long as it trapped fear and attention. Then I noticed a faint light coming from the hallway. A real exit? I scrambled, hands shaking, toward the glow. Shadows pressed close, whispering, trying to pull me back. I lunged toward the light, feeling the room resist me, objects pushing, walls stretching, like the motel itself didn't want to let me go. I held my breath under the bed, the whispers now a low hum vibrating through the floor. Every object in the room seemed alive, flickering, stretching, twisting. The TV screen pulsed violently. Shadows moved in ways impossible, crawling across the walls, merging with the ceiling, falling from corners that shouldn't exist. I peeked. The faceless figure was gone from the corner, but shadows coalesced in the doorway, forming countless faceless shapes, reaching out for me. I realized the motel had no fixed form. It could manifest corridors, rooms, doors, windows, anywhere, as long as it trapped fear and attention. Then I noticed a faint light coming from the hallway. A real exit? I scrambled, hands shaking, toward the glow. Shadows pressed close, whispering, trying to pull me back. I lunged toward the light, feeling the room resist me, objects pushing, walls stretching, like the motel itself didn't want to let me go. I drove as fast as I could, heart hammering, never looking back. My GPS regained signal miles later. I tried to convince myself it was a dream, exhaustion, a trick of the mind. But months later, I received a text from an unknown number. You stayed too long. Next time, don't leave. I never drove Route 89 alone at night again. I never stayed at a motel alone, especially in October. Sometimes, I see the flickering neon of the Sagebrush Motel in dreams, in the corner of my vision while driving. I know it's still out there, waiting for travelers. I'm Marcus, And that was my encounter with a haunted motel on Route 89. A place where the walls breathe, the shadows watch, and fear feeds the building itself. Some doors should never be opened. The roads we travel at night are never as empty as they seem. Shadows linger, signs move, and some places are alive with the memories of fear. Tonight, we journeyed through 7 terrifying road trip encounters. From vanishing signs to haunted motels, from faceless figures on foggy highways to shadows that stalked every turn. Each story reminds us that the world has corners we were never meant to explore. That fear can twist reality, and even the quietest road can hide unspeakable horrors. Some of you may have driven alone at night, wondering if something unseen followed behind your headlights. Some of you may have noticed a shadow in the corner of a parking lot or a sign that didn't belong. Remember this: the ordinary can quickly become the extraordinary, the horrifying, when you least expect it. These stories are real to those who experience them, and now they live in your mind too. If tonight's tales kept you awake or made the hairs on your neck stand on end, then our job here is done. But the roads, the signs, the motel rooms, they're still out there, waiting for the next traveler who dares to drive too far into the night. Thanks for watching. This was Dark Fears.